rise to salute the flag. And the flag's actually here. Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of our veterans, servicemen and women, and those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you. Okay, yes, Council Spatafora.
I know it's not a TV night, but I still think it's worth a moment of silence for the terrific, horrific shooting in Pittsburgh. I think it's worth, we can repeat it next week.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Spatafora. Actually, Councilor Anderson had,
Oh, I'm sorry,
scheduled to do that, but we certainly can do that right now. Councilor Anderson?
Nope.
We'll both do that together.
How's that?
This horrific, terrible situation that took place in Pittsburgh, the loss of lives. We want to offer a moment of silence to those families. I think we also want to offer a moment of silence to the families of other victims of this violence. We've had a couple of African-American men who also were victimized in this hate crimes that have been spreading throughout our country. I think we want to thank God for, at the same time, for sparing the lives of those postal workers and the recipients of those bombs that were sent, that we can be so grateful that those things didn't take the lives as intended. So for those things, I think we ought to offer a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both, gentlemen. Oh, yeah, I do. Barbara was going to do that. And also, before we start, Malden Access TV will be filming this evening, as well as resident John Mariara will also be recording. So please be advised that there will be audio and video recordings this evening. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Roll call. Councilor Anderson? Here. Councilor Kamel? Here. Councilor Condon? Here. Councilor Crowe? Here. Councilor Murphy? Here. Councilor O'Malley? Here. Councilor Sika? Here. Councilor Spatafora? Councilor Winslow? Here. Council President DiMaria?
Here. Next order of business, please.
Okay. Order that $1,048,000 is appropriate to pay design and construction of sewer system improvements. Deadline for 45% reimbursement opportunity for project is December 31st, 2018. Paul Condon.
Councilor Condon for the paper.
Thank you, Madam President. This involves grant money, MWRA, and zero interest loan from MWRA, and doesn't require a lot of debate here tonight. I'm just going to send this to committee, and probably in 2 or 3 weeks we'll be meeting on this to see if we can get it passed before December 31st, which is the deadline. So I move it to committee.
Thank you. On Councilor Condon's motion to refer that matter to finance, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The matter has been referred. Next order of business.
Order that driving school operations be prohibited within 1,000 feet of a primary or secondary educational school.
Thank you. And Councilor Spatafora for the paper.
Thank you, Madam President. This is, I don't want to take all the credit, Council Matheson. I think thought of this idea several months ago. I think, in particular, the Ward 3 area has seen an uptick in this driving schools around the BB location. I think Council Matheson was looking to extend this, I think, to other parts of the city. You know, the concern was just doing this type of training to new new drivers near a school seems ironic, and this would just give us the ability to get them out of, say, a school zone. It's still something we're debating, it's still an ordinance. I don't know what that number is, but we just felt new drivers should not be near a school. I actually saw one the other day, which I usually see on the weekend, so we're just trying to put a little parameter, little safety zone around the local school. I know in Ward 3, and I know the Councilor Matheson has offered to other parts of the area to somewhat put this program in place. And it's going to be referred to ordinance, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafor. Through the chair, the only thing that I might ask of the sponsor is that we include Chief Molis into the discussions in ordinance. I think our police department, as far as enforcement, would be very important to have at the table. Is that okay? Councilor Spatafor?
That's fine, Madam President.
Thank you.
Whoever wants to join, more than happy to.
Thank you. On Councilor Spatafor's motion to refer that matter to Rules and Ordinance, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter is referred. Okay. Okay, thank you. On Councilor O'Malley's motion to suspend docket rules for the purposes of, go ahead,
Introducing, not necessarily a paper, but I'd like to schedule a hearing. If I can introduce it. You guys can decide. If you could we can't talk about it unless you suspend docket rules. You don't have to approve it.
Okay, I think that's fine. We'll
We
do
did
a
it
roll
last
call vote for suspension of docket rules, Mr. Clerk?
It's usually just a voice vote.
It's a voice vote. Okay, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor to suspend docket rules for the purposes of,
Introducing a topic of discussion. We did it last week.
yeah. Councilor Murphy?
No, I was just curious. So we're suspending docket rules, but we don't know what we're suspending them
Yeah,
for?
okay.
I'm struggling with
We,
that.
we, we did it last week for Councilor Matheson. And it
was to refer
Yeah.
people to...
Councilor O'Malley, if you could just explain it just a little bit more. This is
so
committee of the
I
whole.
would like for us to schedule a hearing to discuss current events, particularly, one moment. I have something written down that I would prefer to read. We're really not supposed to talk about it unless we suspend docket rules.
No, this is... Then,
I would appreciate it. I mean, I don't do this often. I would appreciate the discretion. But yes, it would be to discuss political disillusionment and the spread of political, racial, and religious extremism in the United States. I think that what's going on in our country, we need to hear from our residents. I would like to conduct a public hearing of the City Council to ask our residents how they're feeling and what they think. I think it is an emergency. And
Okay, we have a light on the floor, councilors. I got to follow the protocol. Councilor Anderson, please.
Well, I was just going to ask the sponsor what the items were all about, and I think he's beginning to say that. I think, we've got a process where we put things on the docket. We suspend docket rules when there's something that comes up that we need to get to right away, and for us to vote on whether or not we suspend docket rules, yes or no, we need to know what it is that we're going to be talking about, and I think Councilor O'Malley has just answered the question that I was about to ask. Thank you.
Is there any more lights on the floor? Councilor Murphy?
no,
Okay. Okay. Okay, so on Councilor O'Malley's motion to suspend docket rules, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have one opposed.
So I appreciate the counselor's discretion. I don't think I do this often, and usually we give the counselor discretion, but I do appreciate you voting. We just had a moment of silence for the tragedies that have occurred over the last weekend in Pittsburgh. We had a moment of silence about the bombs that are being sent in our mail system to elected officials. And so over the last few days, and I apologize, I am reading from this because it's kind of long, but I'll do my best to read it quickly. Over the last few days, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on history and thinking about the trajectory that we, the United States of America, are headed. After the recent anti-Semitic massacre, which may have been the deadliest attack on Jewish people in the history of our country, the first thing that I did personally was go to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's website to learn more about the rise of nationalism in Germany, the Nazi Party, Adolf Hitler, and the decline of the Weimar Republic, which paved the way for the Holocaust. Similar to pre-Nazi Germany, we live in a period of long-term political dysfunction on all levels of government that has lasted for decades. All one needs to do is look at Congress to understand that something is gravely wrong. This political environment has left many people disillusioned. I'm sure many Maldonians. This widespread disillusionment is being intentionally exploited by people, both domestically and abroad, to sow the seeds of political, racial, and religious extremism on the national, state, and local levels. Extremism has long plagued the world, and that plague has reached our shores and has afflicted our heartland. We must hold ourselves to a higher standard. In the United States of America, we debate with reason and logic, not sticks and stones. We do not have to agree on every or any policy matter, but everybody deserves respect and dignity. The only way to counter extremism is by showing each other dignity and respect. But I want to be clear here. This doesn't mean that you have to tolerate hate or bigotry or anti-Semitism or homophobia or transphobia or any phobia of any religion or people. That kind of intolerance should be addressed directly, both privately as well as in a public forum like this, but with dignity and respect still. Our collective future depends on our ability as a society to learn to resolve our differences peacefully through words. So, with that being said, I would hope to have your support for the City Council to hold a public hearing to hear from our residents about how they feel about political disillusionment that they may be feeling, or maybe they're not, and about the spread of political, racial, and religious extremism in the United States of America. I think that we start here locally and go from there. So I'd move that we have a hearing on that topic. I appreciate your support.
So I see no other lights on the floor. Councilor O'Malley, I will tell you that discussing the tragedies over the weekend with the administration and with our advocate Karen Hayes, there are many pieces that are already in play. I do see what you're saying, but there are, many things already in play. So just wanted to add that. Sure. Councilor Murphy.
I guess I don't dispute that it is definitely, a very tenuous time in our history. But I think that when we do things, just, bringing them up tonight and just throwing it out there, I know you want to hear from them, I'm sure we all do. But I'd like, as Council President just said, I'd like to know what else the city is planning. And I think that if we refer this to the Citizen Engagement Committee, then Citizen Engagement Committee will have time to discuss what anything our outreach coordinator, Karen Clone Hayes, is planning, what the mayor's office is planning, and together we can come up with what's the right method as opposed to just picking a date and saying we're going to have a public meeting. Let's put some thought behind this, what type of resources, because a public hearing is one thing, but I think if you're going to do something like this, you need resources there, from, different elements of the city, so that we can actually have a positive, interactive conversation and maybe come up with some, not just talking points, which talking points are just talking points, but with some, actual, facts of what we can do moving forward, how we would do that moving forward, et cetera. So I would recommend that we send this to the Citizen Engagement Committee for the Citizen Engagement Committee to follow up with the rest of our administration and come up with a plan as to how we move forward.
Okay. There are a few lights on the floor, so I'm going to, let's remember that. We're going to go to Counselor Crowe next.
Thank you, Madam President. And I actually agree that it should really go to citizens' engagement. And I'm not sure what the format would be, because usually a public hearing, you hear from the pros and the cons. I'm not hearing from the people is one thing, and maybe getting some ideas, but usually it's not, this is the matter and who's for it and who's against it. We're not really making a decision on that. So I don't think it should be couched as a public hearing, because we're not having a hearing.
Maybe a focus session or.
So, but I do think, whatever, you can work with Councilor Sika and the rest of the committee and figure out how we do have a forum that we can hear from the residents, but I would not be in favor of a hearing.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Crowe. Counselor Anderson.
Yes, thank you. First off, I'd like to commend Councilor O'Malley for bringing it up. I think it's appropriate for us as a body to be speaking out in opposition to the terrible things that have been happening around the country, and that to be able to engage our citizenry in that discussion. I think Councilor Murphy hits the nail right on the head by saying, let's pull this together with other activities that are going on so that we have a coordinated attack. So I really commend both of you for the synergy of what I think is a good idea and a better mold for that to pull it together through the citizen engagement group. And I think that satisfies in a much bigger way our intentions here. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Anderson. Counselor Spatafora.
Yeah, I think the benefit of going towards the end is I get to steal a little bit of everybody. So I agree with all the councilors who spoke in terms of, when you put it before us in a public hearing session, there are certain rules of engagements that we have to follow as his body, and I don't think a topic like this is something we want to do that in that sense. And I also think, I don't want to say it's a dangerous path, but could be some topics that some organizations want to put before us in the same setting that we probably would be very uncomfortable with in that setting too. So I think we have to be cognizant of that fact. I do recall, unfortunately, these events happen often, way too often. There was the last event, which I'm thinking would follow Councilor O'Malley's thought process, was when the gentleman from, and I use that term loosely, from Malden broke or smashed the Holocaust Museum in Boston. I don't know what organization, but there was multiple organizations involved. They had at the high school. There was a lot of political figures, but it was not political. It was done by the public. It was done well. There was singing. I'm sure we could replicate something like that for the Citizen Engagement Committee. And I look out in the audience, and there's a lot of young members there, and I think we have to include the schools in this type of discussion and all the religious facilities, given the last couple of days in this country. So I think the Citizen Engagement Committee is a great spot, having Karen Hayes and certainly Councilor O'Malley's help, and putting that discussion and debate, or whatever we want to call it. I just don't want to call it a public hearing in a realm where it can actually be a place where they can actually do that stuff. And again, it's not council business, but is a city's business. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafora. Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, I appreciate Councilor O'Malley bringing this up. I know this has been a very difficult week for people in so many different communities. I know Malden gives me such great hope, though, and I think it's good that we have this conversation. I always think that Malden is sort of the pilot for how do such diverse communities work together in a successful way, and we do so many great things in Malden, and to remind ourselves as an example. So I think having this conversation, we had a conversation for race in the past year. We've had Karen Hayes led the community conversations that were such a good thing. So I think having conversations and also thinking of how we as a body can take action to make sure that we are listening and making sure we are always integrating the differences into make positive change. So I think it's good, but I do agree. I think the Citizens Engagement Committee does make a sensible place to do this, and making sure that we're doing it in sync with the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. Councilor O'Malley?
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate the thoughtful dialogue that we've had here tonight. I agree that the Citizen Engagement Committee is a good fit for this. I look forward to following up there. Yeah, I just said hearing because my understanding of a hearing is you have one to hear from people, and that's really what I hope to get out of it. But if it comes in a different format, I'm fine with that. I do know there's a group called CORE. I don't know exactly what it stands for, but I think CORE meets here right. I was told by Councilor Crowe that it's Community Organizing for Racial Equality. Maybe they're an organization that could meet and help organize this. So thank you again for your support tonight.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley, and from the chair, all the sensitive dialogue we had this evening. So on motion from Councilor Murphy to send this to citizen engagement, seconded by Councilor Sika? Councilor O'Malley, excuse me. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that so passes. I think we're... Yeah, before we move to personal privilege, I do want to acknowledge the very fine Malden High School students that are in the audience tonight. Malden Civic Youth Council has joined us this evening, and I had said to them, this is a short meeting, but it's turning into not quite so short, so I'm glad you're here. Welcome. Okay, so do we have any interest for personal privilege this evening? Okay, Councilor Murphy first.
Thank you. I'd like it to have a moment of silence. We lost a very special and unique individual, Mr. Kevin Tully, this past week. Yes, we did. He passed away on the 26th of October, and his services were actually today. The funeral is today from 4, I'm sorry, the wake is today from 4 to 8. Kevin was just a very unique, colorful individual who just lived and breathed Malden, and he lived and breathed the Malden Emergency Center. Rescue 2, Rescue 1, they were his babies. For many years, he was actually the founder of the Malden Emergency Center 50 years ago. He dedicated his life to the service of the people in Malden, whether it was pumping out cellars that were flooded during storms or being in parades. So, I'd like to offer a moment of silence for him. Not only was he dedicated to the Malden Emergency Center, he was also very active in the Massachusetts Emergency Center Massachusetts Emergency Agency. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy.
And on a more lively note, I'd like to thank everyone who came out to the Ward 5 Halloween party on Sunday, and all of the people who helped make it such a success, because it truly, we were overwhelmed with children. It was a fun day, and there's just, some very special people, Dennis and Erica Clow, who I have to say were at the Forestdale School at noon and didn't leave till 7 p.m. that night, as well as many other parents who pitched in throughout the day. So thank you to all. See you next Halloween. And I hope everybody has a very safe Halloween night tomorrow night, in a very candy-filled Halloween night. So thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, on behalf of the council, we wish everyone a happy Halloween tomorrow and a safe Halloween tomorrow. On Councilor Sika's motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
The wake is, visiting hours are 4 to 8. Hold on.